Hello. So I just wanted to make this really quick intro because I am reading sort of a most anticipated book for me, Bride by Hazelwood. This isn't, you know, like, this isn't like something that I basically knew about until recently, because recently I've been getting into Hazelwood. I've been reading, so I read The Love Hypothesis for a bit of a reading popular books challenge, and then I liked it so much that I went and picked up Love on the Brain and also Love Theoretically. I haven't read the novellas. I think it's called like Loathe to Love You, which is like a collection of novellas. I also haven't read her young adult Checkmate one about the chess player or something, but I decided to pick up this one even though I was umming and ahhing about it like for ages, because I'm like, oh, I don't know if, like, I haven't read a paranormal romance in so long. But Andrew read me the synopsis last night because FYI, I cannot read that font, it's too small. But he read the second part, and for I don't know, for whatever reason, I thought this was an alliance between a werewolf and a vampire in like a political sense. No, it's a marriage of convenience. Ali, you should have led with that, right? Marriage of convenience on the front cover, and I would have picked it up straight away. So, I mean, to be fair, it is called Bride. I don't know why that, you know, slipped my attention. But yeah, I'm excited. I've seen a couple of reviews of people really enjoying this. They say that there's a lot of pining and a lot of yearning, and that's one of the things that I love the most in romance, and it's one of the things that I love the most in The Love Hypothesis, because there was a lot of like unspoken pining and yearning between Adam and Olive. So yeah, I'm really excited. I have to go to a alteration dress fitting for my wedding dress today, and I don't drive. If, just in case you don't know, I am legally blind. I am not, you know, legally allowed to be behind the wheel of a vehicle where there are other citizens around. So I'm usually, you know, on a bus, on a train. Today I'm in a passenger seat of a car with my parents. So yeah, I hope I can get a big chunk of this read while I'm driving up there. Okay, so I think I'm 20% into this book. I read the majority of it today just because I didn't really get a chance to read it all that much on the weekend. Also, I was trying to read the physical book, the physical copy, but I was struggling so much because the font in the book is small, and also the font is really thin. This is what I was saying about like how a lot of books that have come out these days, the font size is like really thin. I don't know if they're like trying to save on ink or something, but it's really hard for me. So I've switched over to my e-reader. Today has just been a not so productive day because I've just been reading. I had to go to my eye specialist this morning, and they put these anesthetic drops into my eyes, and then also the dilating drops into them, so they can have a look at the back of my eye and my retinas and stuff. So I was planning on kind of listening to it because I thought, oh, I won't be able to see for the rest of the day, because that's usually what happens. But for whatever reason, the e-reader, the Kindle, is, I think it's because it's not supposed to be, it's not made like a phone screen, and so it's a lot easier for me to read. I still can't really see my phone because it's so bright, and like it just, I can't, it hurts my eyes. But for whatever reason, the Kindle works really great. So we find out, anyway, the prologue starts off with Misery's wedding day. She is set to marry a werewolf, a were-alpha, and she's never met him before. She saw a picture of him, but they basically had their first meeting while she was walking down the aisle and like standing next to him. At first he was kind of like not really taking it seriously. He was kind of like just chatting to someone and everything like that, but then something happens when she's walking down the aisle, and then he spots her, and then his demeanor sort of changes. So that's the whole prologue. Cut to chapter 1. We follow Misery 6 weeks earlier, and she is in the human realm, human world, and she is a vampire. She is working in a startup because it's an Ali Hazelwood protagonist, so of course she's working in some sort of STEM tech situation, and a vampire lady that works for her dad summons her, tells her to go back to the vampire part of the world because her dad wants to speak to her. Chapter 1 gives us a lot of information about this world. So there are vampires, humans, and werewolves. In order to keep the peace in the world, the 3 species sort of had to try and like make deals with each other. So the vampire species have always made a deal with the humans, where they have this thing called a collateral, and she was one of them. So she is a vampire who was sent as sort of a hostage situation to the human world, and then a human person was taken as hostage to the vampire world. So like if anything happens, if war broke out, they kind of lose these important people. I think she makes it a point to mention that they have to be, these collateral people have to be like important to the people, the higher up. So like the congressman or the councilman people, you know, like whoever they find important. So it can't just be any random vampire or any random human. So she was doing that when she was younger. I think she keeps doing this thing where she's like not sharing her age yet. So she's like, that was 10 years ago, that was a decade ago, that was 17 years ago, I was there, you know, we were 11 years old, you know. So it's, I was trying to kind of do the math on where the, like at what point in time and how old she was when these things happen, but it's a little bit confusing right now. She clears it up though in the next chapter, so she is 25 anyway. So so then her dad tells her that she basically has to take one for the vampire team again after she's already done her duty to be the collateral, because I think after she turned 18 she no longer needed to do that and she could come back to the vampire world, but she ended up wanting to stay in the human world for reasons that you find out. Anyway, so her dad summons her and is like, listen, something's happening with the humans, we need to make a deal with the werewolves, a vampire needs to marry the alpha were. And at first she was kind of like, you're being ridiculous, I've already done my duty, I don't want to do this. But then he mentions something and all of a sudden Misery is like, oh okay, yeah, I'll do it. So we don't know yet, from chapter 1 we don't know why she wants to do it, and then we cut to chapter 2 and it's the present day and it's the wedding day and everything. All throughout so chapter 2, 3 and 4 is basically a lot of just her getting used to being in the werewolf realm, in the werewolf world. We do get a little bit of a mystery, which is very, very different to, you know, a lot of other Ali Hazelwood books. So far I really like it. It still has that writing style that Ali Hazelwood has that's very addicting and it just makes you want to read more and more. I like the main character a whole lot because usually her main characters are very like overly quirky,
The only one I found that wasn't overly quirky was Olive, and I think that's why I like The Love Hypothesis a lot more than the other two books I read by her. But Misery seems more of a realistic quirky. So she's very like sarcastic, and she's sort of, I don't know if I would use the word apathetic, but she's like, she kind of is not a positive person. Like, she's like, yeah, of course these things will happen, yeah, of course, like bad things will happen, things like that, you know, like she's that kind of a character, which I really like. I'm really enjoying it at the moment. It still has that Ali Hazelwood lighthearted feel to it, but with an added cloudy gloominess to it. Does that make sense? Like, it's not necessarily like this bleak, dark sort of horror, paranormal urban fantasy feel that you are used to in a lot of other urban fantasy books, but it has that, like, I would call it like the CW Vampire Diaries Riverdale level of gloom. Pretty Little Liars, you know, that kind of level of like gloom, but still lighthearted and sarcastic and fun. Does that make sense? So yeah, I really like that for it. I'm around 100 pages into Bride. I've decided that there are a lot of things that I wanted to kind of underline and highlight in this book. So even though I'm technically reading it on my Kindle, I've got my physical copy here to sort of annotate, just because I do like doing that. And it also, I find that annotating books help me remember the stories a whole lot more. So I'm really intrigued by the plot. This is completely different, not completely different, but it's slightly different to a lot of her other books, because there's a little bit more mystery and there's a little bit more intrigue with this story. I'm not going to go too much into it, but there is a reason why our main character Misery is wanting to agree to marry him. It's not just because she wants to do it for her father. I also like, I don't know if I mentioned it in my previous update, but I like the way the werewolves and the vampires are sort of set up in this. It feels a little bit less magical and a little bit more like realistic, I guess, in that, like, if you could even call a werewolf and a vampire realistic, it feels a little bit more realistic, just because she says like multiple times that like the difference between humans and vampires and werewolves is not with magic, it's to do with biology. So it's like mutation, basically, like just over time. I like the interaction between the main character Misery and the love interest. We don't get a lot of it, but when we do get them interacting with each other, I think it's really nice, because they sort of are like very cautious of each other, which makes sense. They don't instantly be like, all right, we need to work together kind of thing. Like they don't do any of that, because obviously they don't really trust each other. I do find though that some of the quips that she kind of comes out with in certain conversations and things like that is very not, like, it slightly takes me out of the story. Like, she would mention like, oh, we should go along with the bit, you know, like mentioning something is a bit like it's too, it's not, it doesn't fit this world. Oh, that's the other thing I forgot to mention. Something I do appreciate about the main character Misery is that she has like what she puts out in the world and how people see her and how she wants people to see her is different to what she's like in her head. So even though she's like playing this like tough girl kind of a front, kind of a character in front of these werewolves, she's not like she's not like that. Like, she is very like, she second guesses everything and she wants to be this like strong person, but like she knows that she's not, and you as the reader knows how much she's trying and how much she's struggling inside her head, which I really appreciate, because a lot of the times in a lot of like romance books or whatever, you either get this character who's like this bumbling kind of like, you know, not knowing, oh, I don't know what I'm doing with my life kind of a character, or you get this like super like, you know, what girl boss, hashtag girl boss kind of a character who's like, I don't, you know, I can defend myself, and they're like really stoic and like really hard, and I don't mind those. But one thing I don't like about the hashtag girl boss kind of characters in romance books is they never show the other side to that. They never show the layer of like insecurity under that, and that makes it not realistic to me. So the fact that Misery is this character who kind of has to fend for herself, she's never really had anyone protect her, she's never had anyone vouch for her, she's never had anyone on her side except for like her best friend. She has to sort of be the tough girl a little bit in front of people, because that's how she survives. But on top of that, you are in her head, and so you understand the struggles and the insecurities and the pain that she goes through, even though she doesn't like to show that with other people. I find that so much more realistic as a main character than just showing someone who's like this like tough girl kind of, you know, hashtag girl boss, Selena Sardothian kind of character, you know?
I'm very confused. What?
It's so funny because obviously this book has a lot of like werewolf stuff in it, and every time they say mate, I'm Australian, so in my head I'm like, oh, my mother's mate. I'm like, oh, okay, your mother's friend. Like, it's not an old mate, it's an actual like an actual mate. Oh, that's good. I've been drinking this coffee pod that is like really weak, so my coffee's been tasting really weak. But last night we got some level 11 coffee, so I can actually enjoy the taste of coffee again. I've been annotating like crazy, so I thought I would do a halfway 50% mark update on my thoughts. I really like it so far. Are you surprised? I don't know what it is about Ali Hazelwood's books, but I know that a lot of people don't like her writing style, but I also know that a lot of people do like her writing style, and I think I fall in that camp. I will say that in terms of the romance portion of this book, it did take a little bit to get into, which I think I'm gonna say that I think it makes a little bit of sense, because she's not writing a contemporary. We have to get a layer of the land of sorts, you know, like, because this isn't really fantasy, this is like urban fantasy, paranormal, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think the first quarter of this book is us trying to get, you know, introduced to the characters and the world and kind of like what's happening, because there is a little bit of mystery involved. There's a little bit of that like political alliance intrigue situation as well, so it took a bit to get used to that before getting into the romance. I also appreciated that we got to know Misery as a main character first, and then we got to know the love interest as his own character first, before they kind of like amped up the romance, I guess. Like, I will say that this book is more of a slow burn. I was promised pining, and I thought I wasn't gonna get it in the beginning. I was like, they're not really interacting that much, but as you get closer towards sort of the second quarter of the book, I would say, is when the sort of the little glances and the little pining and the little, you know, stares sort of happen, which I really like. So yeah, I'm halfway through. I don't want to spoil, but a lot of the times with especially a lot of modern romance books, I should say, there's this format that you can start to really tell. So you get these two characters, they don't interact that much at all in the beginning, and then they slowly start to get to know each other, and then there's something that happens that sort of makes the tension level up itself slightly, like not too much, but it's slightly, and that's the point where I'm at right now with these two characters. And I don't know what it is. Ali Hazelwood manages to, because a lot of the times what I've seen in a lot of other romance books, that initial kind of tension part before they actually like jump into bed together, that initial tension part is like so close to them just jumping into bed together that it like feels really pointless, if that makes sense. But for some reason in this book in particular, Ali Hazelwood has managed to make that tension rise without being overly crude about it. I don't know if that makes sense, and I don't know if other people will agree with me, but I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it without spoiling, so I think I'm just gonna leave it there. She's so good at writing romance. I have no idea how she does it, because it's like this, she always balances the romance and the like the physical sexual tension, like the physical stuff. She balances that really well, and I don't know how she does it. And that's the thing, like with Ali Hazelwood's books, I wouldn't say that they're extremely explicit or anything like that, but they're like tasteful. Does that make sense? Oh, the other thing that I do really like is she does this thing with her like hero and heroine, where there is this initial meeting of the two characters in the beginning of her book, and then they have misconceptions towards each other, and then they slowly, so there would be like a couple of misconceptions. It's not just like this one big thing. So over time, as they talk, as they interact, as they get to know each other, they sort of, those misconceptions kind of fall away little by little. And I really like the way it's done, because I feel like what a lot of other romance books do differently, I don't want to say wrong, but I personally don't like the way other romance books do it, is that the two characters meet, they have this big overarching misconception of the other person, and then that misconception gets proven wrong over and over again, but it's the same one, so it feels repetitive. Whereas Ali Hazelwood is like, no, you're gonna have like 5 misconceptions of this guy, and then slowly those misconceptions are gonna like fall away. I just said that word multiple times, I'm sorry. Yeah, does that make sense? But yeah, I just feel like because she does that, it doesn't feel overly repetitive. You're not sitting there reading it and being like, yes, we know he's actually a good guy. The main character just doesn't want to believe. Because in Ali Hazelwood's books, it's like, it's little things, it's little misconceptions. It's not like big ones. It's like, oh, I thought he would be an arrogant person. Oh, actually he's not that arrogant. Oh, I thought he would be really like not caring about others. Oh, he's actually really you know, it's like little stuff like that, instead of just like this overarching like vague thing of like, oh, he's a player and he's not a very good guy. It's like, okay, be more specific, make it more of an action based, and then it'll be more believable.
So I finished reading Bride by Hazelwood. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm so happy that I did enjoy it. Here's the thing with her books, I think she's really good at the chemistry, at showing that subtle kind of physical action sort of chemistry between the hero and the heroine. She's always really good at that. What I don't think she's the best at is her dialogue, and I think this is where people say that her writing style feels very fan fiction-y. I think her writing style feels fan fiction-y only in the way she writes dialogue. Yeah, like I get that when people say that. I think what she lacks in the dialogue department, she makes up for in the subtle actions and subtle glances and the chemistry, the physical chemistry between the two characters. So I personally don't find it to be unreadable or anything like that. She does have like slightly cringy dialogue, but you know, like I said, I don't really care, because the other stuff that she writes is very good. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm really happy. Anyway, let me know if you've read this. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I hope you enjoyed this little non-spoilery reading vlog of mine, and I'll see you in another video next time.